The living room was darker than usual, as if the house itself had decided to erase every trace of life before I crossed it. But I knew this wasn't silence, it was waiting. That was my last night there, and the house seemed to know it. Every noise, every shadow, every corner carried a strange kind of awareness, as if everything around me was paying attention to what I was about to do. The first noise came from the hallway behind me, a sharp crack, short, far too familiar. I froze for a second, not because I was afraid, but because that sound was part of my history there. For years, every crack in the floor meant the same thing. He was coming. I'm in alert. I'm in danger. It meant I needed to be smaller, quieter, more submissive. But that night, when the crack echoed, I simply breathed. And I kept walking. The sound was no longer a command. It was just sound, and that difference changed everything. I walked slowly across the living room, feeling the floor give beneath my feet. Each board releasing the same groan that had terrified me so many times before. But now, none of those noises told me who I needed to be. I ran my hand along the cold wall of the room. It answered my touch with a faint, almost imperceptible vibration, as if it were recording my farewell. Then came another noise, the closet door creaking, the one that never closed properly. A long, dragging creak, heavy with memory. How many times had that creak given me away? How many times had it warned him that I was trying to disappear? How many times had I held my breath to avoid making any sound at all, as if my very existence were a problem? I stuck closer to the closet and pushed it gently. It creaked again, but this time it felt different. It felt tired. So was I, but not in the same way. The house's noises no longer silenced me, they bore witness. Each sound seemed to carry old memories, shattered pieces hidden in corners I had learned to avoid. And that night, for the first time, I let those sounds reach me. The kitchen door tapped lightly as the night wind slipped through some crack. That soft thud that once made me freeze now sounded like the house itself asking, "You're leaving, aren't you?" I felt my chest tighten, but not with fear. It was something else, something that felt like liberation still being born. I walked into the kitchen. Inside, the sound of the clock hanging on the wall echoed louder than usual. Tick-tock, tick-tock. For so many years, that sound measured the time of my submission, the time of my apologies, the time of my endless attempt to please someone who never wanted to be pleased. But on that last night, every tick-tock was a countdown. It was as if that clock one that had held me captive for so long was finally marking my exit. I looked around the entire room, the cold sink, the worn tiles, the table that had overheard arguments still echoing in my chest, the chair where I had curled in on myself so many times. And then came the most familiar sound of all, the sound that had always made me tremble, the front door being nudged by the wind, a light thud, almost imperceptible. But I knew that sound. Every time it happened, I thought it was him arriving. I shrank. My breathing changed. My body froze. But no, the sound no longer said, "He's here." It said, "You're leaving." I stood still in front of the door, just listening. It was strange how something so small could carry so much meaning. The wind struck again, moving the door just a few millimeters, enough for the lock to vibrate and send that soft metallic sound through the air. The house seemed to breathe with me. I took a deep breath and walked to the center of the living room. My bare feet met cold patches on the floor, invisible memories of storms I had survived inside those walls. And as I walked, the noises began to align. It was as if the house were playing one last concert. The crack of the floor, the creak of the door, the knock of the wind, the tired tick-tock of the clock. But for the first time, I wasn't the fearful audience. I was the director of the final scene. I sat on the couch, feeling the frame vibrate slightly beneath my weight, another familiar sound. So many times that noise had marked the beginning of arguments, confrontations, threats coming down the hallway with heavy footsteps. But that night, the couch was just a couch. The house was just a house. And the noises were just sounds. They no longer had power over me. The entire house felt small. Its real size, the size it had always been, before my fear expanded it into an inescapable world. And on that last night, for the first time, everything returned to its proper scale. The noises were no longer monsters. They were no longer warnings. They were no longer omens of pain. They were reminders. They were farewells. In that moment, I knew the next night would not be there. Not in that prison with walls and a roof. Not in that space heavy with echoes of who I had been. The next night would be mine, free, far away, whole. And the house, with its noises that had always ruled me, finally fell silent inside me. If this story touched something inside you, subscribe to the channel and stay with us on this journey. And don't forget to watch the next video in the next section or the next series, where this story continues and the path toward freedom keeps unfolding.